Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Leppy Duels. It's episode 21 this week. We're excited to be here with you. We've got a fantastic show planned with some big news dropping in the disc golf world this past week. And of course, we've got the European Open coming up. So we're excited to dissect those topics with you. But first, here's how the show works if you haven't been here before. In a moment, you will meet our 4 distinguished guests. Each of those guests are going to go 1v1 versus the other 3 contestants within each duel. Each contestant will have 1 minute to deliver their points on the assigned debate topic, along with an additional 20 seconds to respond to their opponent's comments. After that, I, as the host, will determine a winner of each duel, and the first one to fill up their scoring bar wins the episode. Simple enough, let's meet this week's cast. First up, he's defending his championship from last week and the week before, our back-to-back defending champion, Mr. Brian Papa Wolf Frawley. Challenging Brian in the first opening duel, he's the champion of the Greater Peoria Open A tier this past weekend. Congratulations, Mr. Kevin Kiefer. Third guest this week hails from Texas. He has not been with us for a couple of weeks, but he's back, and he's still banging just like his shop down in Houston, Mr. Matt Stillwagon. And rounding out the cast this week, the owner at Crew 42, Zach O'Haron. Thanks for being with us, all for you. Let's get into it. Brian, Kevin, you guys are up first. Brian, you're taking the floor to kick us off. European Open coming up this weekend. Big event overseas. A lot of big names there. A lot of big names trying to prove themselves. So I'm going to hear from your guys' opinion. What are the biggest storylines? What should fans specifically be watching for this weekend in Europe? Brian?
I think that what every fan's hoping for is that they're going to get a duel like they got last year with Eagle and Macbeth. That being said, I don't think that's what we're going to see. I think what we're going to end up watching or anticipating is a European making a push. We haven't had a European win one of these. It's going to be a big storyline. I don't think it's going to happen in the President's Cup. Sorry, I looked at those rosters and it's too stacked up. But any course, couple rounds, you can get a real challenge. And we've seen people go toe-to-toe with Macbeth over his time in Europe, over these last few events. Yes, he's won a lot of them. Yes, he's heating up at the perfect time. Yes, that's who I'd actually bet on. But that being said, I think what we all should be watching for is kind of European get the major.
All right, so watch the European field specifically. I like it, Brian. Kevin, what's your answer here?
I don't think it's going to be watching a European. It could be. I'm not going to doubt anybody over there, but I think we're going to have to watch Paul Macbeth and just go back on his heater. We've seen Paul finally heating up. He got his first Elite Series win this last weekend at PCS Sula, and I think we're finally going to get to watch him kind of like go back to that McBeast mode. We got to see him shoot that 1090 rated round, that 13 under par, that last round. And I think that we're finally getting to see that old last year Paul Macbeth kind of come back out, feel more comfortable with his discs, more comfortable over there in Europe. And I would just like to see Paul get back out on top. He lost for the first time ever last year to Eagle McMahon, and I don't think he's going to let that happen again. And seeing him kind of get back to his former self, I think we could see Paul go out there and average 1070 just another time at the European Championship and just dominate the field. And that's what I'm most looking forward to, is just seeing Paul back out on top.
Okay, so let's transition the question back to the fans specifically. Brian, why is watching the European side of the field specifically more important for the fans this weekend than watching Paul Macbeth?
I'm going to make an assumption that the majority of people that are watching are going to be watching in the United States. I think their streams are a little bit higher, which means this is a big opportunity for the European people to be more exposed to more fans and to get to meet more of these wonderful people. One of the things I did last year is I followed every single person that played in this event specifically on Instagram. It's been such a cool part of being a fan to follow them over the last year.
Well said. Kevin, why is it Paul Macbeth over the European field?
Paul is the most electric player in disc golf. He sells the most discs, the most tickets for the events, Most people only buy the subscription in general to watch Paul Macbeth, and Paul is historically great at the European Championship. So if I can watch Paul on one of his favorite courses in the world, I think that's why people are going to tune in to actually watch this tournament.
Okay, so although I don't disagree with you, Kevin, at all, I think Paul Macbeth is something that fans should watch for sure. I think a lot of fans are automatically going to be watching Paul. I think to think outside the box here, Brian's right. The majority of viewers being from the U.S., in this case most likely, I think it's important to look at something a little bit outside the box here. I liked your points to back it up. So Brian takes duel number 1, sends us to the second one. Zach and Matt, you guys are up. Matt, you're up first. Big news this past week with the FPO being dropped and moved around from the Disc Golf Pro Tour. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts, specifically from a sponsor perspective. If you're in a sponsor's shoes, somebody who's involved with the Pro Tour and sponsoring those events, now that the FPO field has either been dropped or moved to a different state potentially, what's your take and what are you doing now as a sponsor, Matt?
Staying put, to be 100% honest with you. This is, stay out of the politics of it. Let the politics of it be what it's going to be. It's already ugly enough. Your commitment was to the tour and the game. And so as a direct result, you're going to lose more face making a move one way or the other right now. The only exception to that rule is if you're the kind of sponsor that's putting direct money towards FPO, in which case you should impress upon the DGPT to allow those other events to share that money. But other than that, if you're a sponsor, you stay put. Ride the season out. You're almost halfway through there. And ride it out and let the chips fall where they may next year. You can still make a statement and stay under the radar without going too far.
Well said. Zach, what's your take here? What are you doing as a sponsor?
I do agree. I think they should stay as well. To that point, though, I would argue that for this particular situation, I would even press harder to say that you want to support the FPO only divisions to continue to show that you are in support of that. Because I don't think that's particularly political. I think you're saying, hey, the Disc Golf Pro Tour is making a difficult decision. This has been split. I would like to still be around and representing the FPO division because regardless of who's playing in it, you want to represent that. And in addition, when it comes to big title sponsors, if they really want to push their weight around and get something back or make sure they're still the title sponsor, they might have the wiggle room to do that. But smaller sponsors, we see Great Lakes disc flags all over the place on tour right now. I don't know if companies like that need to really push for anything right now. Communicate, say that again, they're in a tough situation. You want to still be represented and go through this year because you're supporting disc golf, and because you don't want to burn any bridges here. You want to continue doing that, and I think the Disc Golf Pro Tour will make it right by doing something for them without being prompted. But right now, stay right here where you're at.
Okay, so you're both saying the same thing. Stay put if you're a sponsor right now. Double down on that statement, but also differentiate yourself if you can to help me pick a winner here in this second duel, Matt.
Okay, I'll go ahead and differentiate from it. You brought up the supporting of the FPO. No matter where the FPO goes for the rest of this year, unless the proper changes are made, this will continue to follow them. And so as a direct result, you're playing chase. Now, stay put, stay where you're at. You can still support the FPO. There's no problem in that. There's nothing that says that if they get organized or if this gets rescheduled, that you can't put money towards it. But I'm not making any drastic moves. You stay put. Let the FPO figure itself out. You're sponsoring the event. And at the end of the day, we all need to remember nobody and nothing is bigger than the game itself.
Zach?
Yeah, so you're saying you stay put because nothing's bigger than the game itself. I feel like if you aren't making a push, you still stay in the FPO field. You're making just as much of a statement saying that you aren't wanting to do that because you're snubbing it to the Disc Golf Pro Tour because of their decision rather than supporting disc golf itself. So I really do think that they have to make a point of it to communicate with the Disc Golf Pro Tour, make sure that their logos, that their branding, that those sponsors are being present at those events because you do want to communicate clearly to the fan base that just because this is happening, that is outside of your control, that you are still there supporting disc golf itself. And so being really intentional in communicating that point. If you just happen to stick around, don't do anything, and things kind of fall where they go and you happen to not be there, it feels like it could be misinterpreted. So making a real clear point to follow both and stick around.
All right, Zach, I love it. I think you nailed it. Matt, I think you nailed it as well. Matt, you did have a small advantage going first, so I think I'm going to give you the edge here in duel number 2. Sends us to the third one. Zach, you are back up. You're taking on Brian. The way the news was released for all the FPO news that dropped over the past week, kind of the order that it came out, not necessarily officially, but unofficially as well through rumors swirling. I want your take on that, Zach. How did you feel about the way the news came out?
Oh, well, as the news kind of unraveled and you saw the cryptic messages and you saw the people speculating and stuff, really, I just didn't put a lot of stock in it because we just weren't hearing from the official source itself. Until you hear it kind of from them, there really wasn't anything to put stock in, even if people were connected to that organization. So really, I was waiting for them to kind of make that announcement. And when they did, I was disappointed because I know this has a very strong negative connotation to the FPO field. Women who are in the local area who would normally play those majors, might be the only major they can play in, can't do that anymore because it's obviously moved to another state potentially. It has other implications as well, like for the traveling. I think there's like 16 or more couples that travel on the tour. So there's a big impact here in making this change, and I'm disappointed to see that it's come to that. If they're honest in why they made that decision, I think they're being squeezed in a tight spot, and they made the best decision they could in the moment. But I wish it wasn't this. I wish we could just keep going as it was. Unfortunately, that's just not going to happen right now.
Okay, Brian, how did you feel about the release of the news?
I thought the release of the news was chaotic, misinformed, underwhelming, and just unsettling. If we saw these rumors pop up 2.5 weeks ago or whatever, and then it takes that long for a public statement or this statement to come out, my question is like, what else do we not know about? So the comments on the various podcasts or whatever really threw everyone for a loop. It's going to happen. It's not going to happen. It will all be together. My original tweet right away was, wow, this is wild. And I shared the news. And then my Facebook statement was, exactly what Zach said earlier about I feel bad for the local FPO players that couldn't play the big event. So I think chaotic is the overall word that I would use to release that.
All right, Zach, go ahead and respond to Brian and differentiate yourself if you can.
Yeah, I would say to Brian's point, talking about taking 2 weeks or whatever for them to respond to. In my interpretation of that, and for what I am seeing happen, I would hope that Disc Golf Pro Tour isn't going to make a public or an official statement until they made a final decision and exhausted all options. I would hate for them to come to this decision too prematurely and then find a resolution a week later that ended up changing what they were saying. I would prefer for them to be finalized, clear in their communication, like their official post reading through it. I understood why they made the decision. I understood what was impacted. I agree, as a sports fan, I wish I got that as quick as possible, but I don't want to receive that any earlier until they know for certain that that's what's going to happen. And so I don't have a problem with them taking time to respond to that because I want it to know when they know for sure.
Well said, Zach. Brian, go ahead and end this duel and take it home.
It was definitely well said, but Zach's gonna be wrong when they come out with another statement this week because they came out too early with not enough information, and they have to come out again. But with all that being said, I'm gonna lean on what Paige Pierce said last night on Nick and Matt's show and just say she supports Disc Golf Pro Tour and that they're gonna figure out and do what's right. So I'm gonna do that as a fan and one of those sponsors, like the previous mentioned debate.
Awesome. I think both of you nailed it. Again, this is a touchy topic and a deep topic and an important topic to talk about. You both had great statements. Zach, you went a little long, but I think more importantly, Brian made a couple points in his initial statement, and he kind of answered the question more directly off the bat, just calling it, hey, the answer is it was chaotic. And simply put, that's how it was. So, well said, Brian. Brian takes the win here in this duel, sends us to number 4, Kevin and Matt. Kevin, you're going to be up first, taking the floor. We've spent 2 questions talking about it now. Now that all this news has dropped with the FPO field, where does the Disc Golf Pro Tour go from here, Kevin?
Yeah, that's kind of a hard question. I think what we'd eventually like to do in a perfect world, perfect case scenario is go to an FPO only tour that follows the Pro Tour when it's in red states, but then when it gets to a blue states like tournament, it just ends up going into like a red states local, kind of close as we can, and can stay close to the Pro Tour, but also can stay where it can into a state where it can protect the integrity of FPO sports. I think it's going to be really hard to continue to film and to keep the added cash the same. But if the Pro Tour can at least keep one of those things, and I would hope it would be the filming aspect of this down to really just keep producing and podcasting the FPO sports to keep growing it, then eventually we can have it to where its own independent tour, and it can follow its own kind of tournament swings and grow itself in that aspect.
Okay. Matt, what's your take here?
Okay, I'm going to take this a slightly different direction. Yes, they're going to have their own tour at some particular point. It does not matter unless they change the policy for their tour to read that it is a sex-protected, not a gender-protected division. That's the only way they're going to get around this. Going to different states, it doesn't matter. This is going to end up in the Supreme Court somewhere anyways. I've long said since this first began that the trajectory of the women's tour is going to be much more akin to pro women's tennis than any other sport. They're going to have to break clean. They're going to have to start it up. They're going to have to get some college kid doing videography that's looking to make a business for himself, and they're going to have to organically grow it. It sucks, but if this is what you want, if this is the direction that it's going to go, that's the way it has to go. And it'll grow off of that because the field has gotten so much stronger over the years.
Okay, so Matt says we need some wording change in the policy for starters, and things got to grow organically. Kevin says, hey, we might be able to separate blue and red states and grow organically from that as a separate tour. So you've differentiated yourselves already. Go ahead and respond to each other's comments, Kevin.
Yeah, I agree with the aspect that it's going to need to change in policies, but I don't think that that's going to happen anytime soon. Like, for example, we have a pretty well written out policy of what we think the guidelines should be to be able to play in the FPO division. But the problem is when we play in these different states, for example, Minnesota, we just can't get it past the court. The court's going to sue the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Natalie's going to end up making a whole bunch of money, and she's going to, as she quotes, or as Natalie quotes, burn this all down with her. So we have to, at least for the moment being, get out of the blue states, play in the red states for the FPO division, protect the integrity of FPO sports, and have them start their own tour that kind of stays within the red states as it lies.
Okay, Matt?
That's not going to work because it's all about appeals, appeals, appeals. Look at how the OTB played out. California ruled in favor of Natalie Ryan, and then they took it to an appeals court, and they were able to get a stop, okay? Now, they didn't have that luxury when it came to Minnesota. Don't make it about the policy, and don't leave it in the hands of a politician or a judge. I'm not even suggesting that the success of a women's pro tour lies with the initials P, D, G, and A. I'm genuinely not. There's enough entrepreneurship out there, and it's a sport that's still young enough that there's going to be some kind of rival that's going to fix this. There are already tours that are out there that are unsanctioned, that are good tours, that are already addressing this through their own bylaws. It's not going to take a rocket scientist, but don't give it to a judge or avoid a politic, because then you're just playing into the hands of what they want.
All right, bold statement from Matt at the end. You both have separate ideas on this, which I think is very interesting to see the direction that you guys took. Kevin's very short-term focused as far as where the DGPT is going. I think follows the question for sure. Matt says we need a policy change wording to start, and we can't be messing with the courts in general. We need our own tour, lots of things like that. We need, individual funding type of stuff. So completely different answers. This one is a toss-up and a tough one. Tough one for me to go, but I'm actually going to go with Kevin here, not for the reasoning or the opinion, but I think you answered the question more directly, and that's going to give you the edge here. So Kevin takes the win in this debate, but fantastic debate number 4 sends us to debate number 5. Kevin, you're back up. You're taking on Zach. Kevin's going to be up first. Here's an interesting one for you. Do tee pads need to be standardized, Kevin?
Yes, absolutely. They need to be standardized. Baskets need to be standardized. The amount or how long each course needs to also be standardized. And then on top of that, tee pads definitely need to be standardized. Over in Europe, we have they only play on turf tee pads, which is something that keeps the longevity of your shoes alive. It keeps the texture of just the tee pads in general consistent. I myself love concrete tee pads in itself. But I think that if we can just standardize tee pads, standardize how long they've been used and how long that we can keep using them, then we prevent injuries. There's not going to be a case scenario where Paul slips on a tee pad and hurts his knee and is out for a couple of months. If we can keep injuries and keep slick tee pads away, then we're going to have actual good shots out of these players, which is what all these fans have come to see. So yes, absolutely, we need to make sure these tee pads are up to standard and that they're standardized.
All right, Zach, do we need standardization on the tee pads?
I got a secret for everyone. Ready for this? No. The answer is no. You should not standardize tee pads. There's a couple reasons for this. One of them is that we look at courses historically, DGLO being one of them, having courses that are properties that are unwilling to put down cement tee pads. If you make cement, let's say, the standard, then all of a sudden there are courses that you'll have difficulty getting that standard implemented at. If you make it turf only in certain parts of the country, I'm thinking out west, Las Vegas, Texas, drier states, turf is really good. If you start going out east in Maine where it rains more often, turf can become slipperier, like depending on the turf. So like this shouldn't be standard. We should absolutely let people decide what are the best pads for the areas that they're going to be in. Context matters immensely. Even Kevin's making the point right now, Europe is turf only, but then he's saying I prefer cement. So even if we're talking about standards, you're going to give advantages to some player because their preference of pad will be given to one or the other. Good shots for some and bad for others. I mean, that's not fair. Don't standardize it.
Two completely different sides. I love it. Kevin, you said yes, so go ahead and respond to Zach, but also go ahead and tell us your opinion on what should be the standard.
The standard should be turf tee pads. If you look back to Texas States, where I was there, the tee pads themselves were perfect. They were pretty brand new. The texture of the turf itself was very fine, and it was super grippy. It was almost like sandpaper. So if you could keep those consistent out on the Pro Tour, which you could for sure, then you could have it to where the whole Pro Tour is going to have consistent tee pads. Everybody's going to be happy because nobody on the Pro Tour complains about those tee pads in particular. And then if you go back to you can have turf tee pads anywhere. One of my home courses back in Lakeland, Florida, we weren't allowed to put permanent tee pads out there, so we just went to turf, and nobody complained. So if we can go turf tee pads, make sure it's the ones where it's a 360 where you can throw from any angle, and then make sure they're replaced within a well-managed time. Probably, I would assume once a season would be plenty. And then we'll be completely fine on the Pro Tour, and no one's going to get injured, and no one's going to be upset with them.
Zach?
So we're stipulating that they have to be replaced, which means we have to have more money for it. Does that fall on the Disc Golf Pro Tour? Does that fall on the course people themselves? I mean, these are all huge questions, right? Because this is money that we're talking about. Okay, if we talk about DCLO having to have turf pads, that means we need to go out there, remove all the cement, work with the property to do that, put in turf tee pads that are more permanent, then replace them every year. You're not going to get properties to buy into this. This is not, like, as a reasonable standpoint, that's already a difficult barrier as it is. when it comes to you saying safety, again, where's you should be showing data here that says, well, playing on cement leads to more injuries and having evidence to support that. That if you have turf, that this turf you're saying it feels like sandpaper. To other people in shoes, Calvin admits that he plays with flat shoes. Turf plays differently for him than cement does. This is, I mean, we're talking about so many different variables, and if we allow the tournaments to pick what they have there to make it as the best for those conditions, right? Cement for East, turf for West, whatever, then we're going to get better results. I don't think standardizing it fixes anything. I don't think it makes it safer necessarily. Like, this is a toss. I don't think we should standardize it. Leave it alone.
So I love that you went there. I love that there was a differentiation in the argument. That's what this show is all about. So thank you guys for that first and foremost. Zach, I do think your points had a little bit more substance to them and reasoning as to why the answer here is no, and the advantages and disadvantages to the T-pads, and why a specific standardization is not necessarily the best idea. So for that reason, I'm giving you the win here. That means Brian is at 2. The rest of you are at 1. Matt's the only one who can force a tiebreaker with Brian, so pressure's on here in the final duel. Matt, you are up first. We haven't done this for several weeks, but buy, sell, hold is back on the table here on Leppy Duels. If players were stocks, who you buying, who you selling, who you holding? Matt?
Okay. I'm going to go completely zany directions on all three of these tonight. All right. For this weekend, I'm going to just stick straight up with European Open. Okay. I put it this way. I'm going to sell on Paul. I'm going to sell on him. Coming off a big win. I know he loves the course. I know things are heating up, but there's an ebb and flow to everything. And he's been playing hot, but I just don't think he's going to take it this weekend. There's been a lot of good parity on tour, and I just think he's not going to get it. Now, for my hold, okay, the person that I think is going to do a decent job this weekend and kind of, surprise people a little bit. I think Garrett Gerthy is going to be on that lead card in the end. Here's a man who's playing on an emotional high right now. He's over in Europe, touring with his brand new fiance, having some fun over there. I'm telling you what, I got a funny feeling the man's head is on straight. And we all know that when your head's straight, your game's straight. And he's just kind of been lurking right in the middle there, but I think he's going to take a big step forward, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the lead card on the last day. Now, on my hold, I'm going to go a really different direction with this one. I kind of like Scott Stokely this weekend. I know that it sounds kind of odd, but the man's been having a vacation and shooting some career rounds, playing European Tour events leading up to this. He's been on that lead card with Paul. He loves the limelight. I got a funny feeling. I'm kind of holding on him right now. So, in all honesty, that's kind of my direction with this.
Okay, Brian, where are you going?
Well, that was a lot. So you're going to sell Paul McBeth, the guy that's really just dominates in majors right before a major. It's an interesting stock choice, but we will come back to that later. I'm going to buy Paul McBeth. Shocker, we went there. We're coming into a major. He's coming off of a win. He's won like 3 out of his last 4 with a second place, too. I'm always going to buy the person that's on the hottest streak, and I can't say anyone is on a hotter streak than Paul McBeth. The person a few days ago, I would have said, would have been Calvin. He's done really, really well, but to me, he looked terrible at PCS. So look at me. I'm taking a big, expensive stock like Calvin and saying, no, thank you. I'm going to sell you. I'm a little worried about you. Let's see how the second half treats you in those tight wooded courses, as we previously mentioned. Now, I'm going to hold my boy. I'm going to hold Kyle. I'm holding Kyle Klein. You're injured. I love you. You're over in Europe having a good time, having fun. I just want to hold you, give you a nice little hug. It's going to be okay. I'm not dumping you yet, buddy. I just want to hold you.
All right, Matt, so you took about 2 minutes in your opening statement. That's hurting you already. Can you redeem yourself here on your rebuttal?
Sure. I'm still selling on Paul. No, and I'll tell you why. Number one, because I knew Brian was going to take the man, and you want parody on the show, so I'm going the opposite direction with it. But number two, I'm sick and tired of picking all the same old characters. He might be right, the man's playing hot, but this is when, right when you think you got it all figured out is usually when the carpet gets pulled out from underneath you. And how many times have we talked about the previous weekend going, damn, didn't expect so-and-so to step up? I think the time is now.
Brian, bring it home. Can you win the episode?
Well, again, I don't think you ever want to bet it against Paul prior to a major. But I did go out on a limb. I sold Calvin Heimberg, who's already made $50,000 this year, which is a ton of money. And he's arguably destroying, see what I did there, the entire field for the most part. But I'm going to sell him this week and the next few weeks.
Matt, I said it already before your rebuttal. You kind of shot yourself in the foot with the time element to this here show, and that set you back. The bold statements, I've got no problem with them, though some people might have a lot to argue with on the Paul Macbeth selling side, as Brian already mentioned. But for that reason, Brian, I liked your points. I think they were well said, and you didn't go over your time. So congratulations, you have won your third straight episode, cleaning up this month. Good stuff from you. Floor is yours. What do you got for us?
All right. If you have 15 minutes, please go on to Paul Macbeth Foundation's YouTube page. Watch the video they released about him going back to the course that he put in Mexico. It just talks about how great it is to get one more person to play disc golf. One more person. That's going to be my mantra for the rest of the year. One more person to play disc golf every day. You guys can do it too.
Good stuff. One more person. Go find somebody in your local neighborhood. Bring them out to the course. Give them some plastic. Go throw a round with them. Awesome stuff, Brian. Congratulations on your third straight win. Zach, Kevin, Matt, fantastic episode, honestly. I thought good stuff was shared across the board on some heavy topics. So well done from all you guys. Thanks for being here. You guys at home, we won't see you next week, but we will see you in 2 weeks live on site in Peoria at Ledgestone. So we are excited to see you there. If you're down there, come hang out with us. We record on Tuesday night, so we'd love to see you out there. We'll make a post about it. But until then, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the European Open, and we'll see if selling Paul was a good idea for Matt. Have a good night.